Welcome to Ploen Patterns. My name is Josefine and today I will be showing you how to sew my Tyra culottes pattern step by step. Let's go! First, let's take a look at what you will need. So the first thing is the actual PDF pattern. You can find the link in the description box below. And you can go to ploenpatterns.com and buy the Tyra culottes pattern. So today we will be making view A, which is the culotte version, the shorter one. There's also view B with long legs. You can choose which one you want. The instructions are completely the same. Then you're also going to need your fabric. I made my pair with 100% viscose fabric. So you need something flowy, drapey, quite thin, not too stiff, or the look will be completely different. So viscose, rayon, tencel, polyester, silk even would be nice. So you need that nice drapey, flowy fabric. Then you need matching thread, and then you need 4 centimeter wide elastic to go at the waist. And then you will need some interfacing for the pocket openings so they don't stretch out. So you will need to print out your PDF pattern. You can just use your regular printer at home, and then you will cut the edges and tape them together. I'm going to show you exactly how I do that.
This is a layered PDF, so you just choose which size you want to print and uncheck all the other boxes. One layer always needs to be selected, and that's the last layer, keep selected. And this is because you have all your information and text on it that you need for all sizes. Make sure your scale is set to 100% or actual scale. When you have printed all the pages, you'll find on the first page you have a test square. So you measure either inches or centimeters to see that it's true to scale. And then you're going to need to cut off the edge of the paper on the right side. This is going to go on top of the other page, so number 1 goes on top of number 2, and you make sure the black squares line up like that, and then you can tape them together. So you just do this until you have all papers aligned and taped together, and then you can cut out your pattern pieces.
How to choose a size. So measure your widest part around your butt, your seat, and that's what's going to determine your size. So you check body measurements in the size chart, and you go with the one that is closest to your seat or hips. Then you can adjust the waist with the elastic, so you don't really have to pay attention to the waist at this point. It might be a good idea to check the length of the trousers, whichever view you choose, because we all are very different heights. So you can print out the entire trouser leg pattern piece, hold it in front of your body when you stand in front of a mirror and see, do you like the length or do you want to change it? It's really easy to change the length on this pattern because the leg is completely straight, so you don't have to adjust a lot. You can just cut off a piece and do it on the front and back, and then you have your perfect length.
You can choose if you want to view your instructions on your screen or if you want to print them. I prefer printing because I can take notes on the paper and I have it all in front of me and I don't need my phone to look at. But it's up to you. Make sure you have pre-washed your fabric so it doesn't shrink later. And I also like to iron my fabric before I start placing it on my table here. So I washed it, and since it's viscose, it's really good to wash it because viscose can shrink a lot. So you don't want that happening later. And then I ironed all the fabric before placing it, so it's really smooth and straight, no wrinkles. And then I'm just figuring out the best way to place the pattern pieces to make sure I use as little fabric as possible. You do have the separate file in the pattern for lay plans. That's just a suggestion, and it's gonna be good to make your own plan depending on your fabric, but it's a good starting point. When you have placed all your pattern pieces, it's time to pin or use pattern weights or whatever your preferred method is. Make sure you have no wrinkles underneath in your fabric and pin all the pattern pieces in place. And then you're ready to cut out your fabric. 1 centimeter seam allowance is already included in the pattern, so just cut exactly at the edge of the pattern piece. When you have cut out your pieces, you will mark your notches. Just cut a little bit into the fabric with your scissors to mark the place. You can also use pins or a pen if you want to. I just prefer cuts, it's quite easy to see. And now you have all your pattern pieces cut out, and we are ready to begin. So we now have to cut out the interfacing pieces. You will need to place interfacing on both pocket openings on the front leg pattern pieces and also on the pocket facings. So to start off, we need some interfacing. You need the one that is quite soft. You don't want it to be too hard and stiff because the fabric is flowy and light. You also need the interfacing to be suitable. So you will need to make some strips. I made mine around 1.5 centimeters wide, and I measured the distance on the pocket opening to determine the length. You will need to make 4 pieces in total. Iron the strips of interfacing to the wrong side of all these pattern pieces. Now that that's done, it's time to overlock all the edges of all the pattern pieces. So if you don't have an overlocker, you can just use zigzag on your regular machine. Here I'm just changing out to matching thread. Sew around all the edges of the fabric to make sure it doesn't fray. You will still be able to see your notches you made before, even after you've overlocked. And then we're done with the overlocker. I'm moving on to my regular machine. I'm changing to matching thread for this one too, so we can start putting the pieces together. Put the front trouser pieces right side together with the pocket facing pieces and pin them together. Then sew with 1 centimeter seam allowance on your regular sewing machine. Use a straight stitch. Press seam allowances apart of the seam you just sewed. Then turn the pocket pouch to the inside of the trouser. Press the pocket opening so it looks neat. Repeat these steps on the other side. Add the pocket facing on top of the pocket pouch. Pin and sew all around the edge of the pocket pouch through the 2 layers of the pocket pieces. Repeat on the other side. Baste pocket at top and sides to keep all layers in place for the next step. Sew through all layers with the longest stitch on your sewing machine. Repeat on the other side. Place the trouser pieces, right sides together, pin and sew all along the side seams on both legs. Use a normal stitch, so return from the longest stitch to 2.5. And then sew the side seam. Make sure the notches match up. Press the seam allowances apart. Now let's move on to the inner leg seam. Place the trouser legs right sides together, front and back, and pin right sides together all the way along the inner leg seam, and then sew. Press the seam allowances apart on both legs. Now for the crotch seam. Pin and sew all around the crotch seam right sides together. Start at the crotch, pin, make sure the back is right sides with the back and the front is right sides with the front. Sew all around the crotch seam with a straight stitch. You can sew the crotch seam twice if you like. This is often done in suits and children's wear, for example, to make them extra durable. Press the seam allowances apart when you're done. Pin the short sides of the waistband, right sides together. And then sew with a straight stitch. You now have a circle for the waistband. Press the seam allowances apart. Then fold the waistband over, wrong sides together. Place center back of the waistband, right sides together with center back of the trouser. Pin all the way around. Leave an opening to insert the waist elastic. The opening is marked as a notch on the pattern, at a distance from center back. Start at center back, sew all around the waist until you come to the marking. This leaves an opening where you can put the elastic through. Try the elastic on your natural waist to determine which length to use. You might also want to try to slide the elastic over your hips so you know it will be easy to take the garment on and off. Make sure you have enough. It also needs to overlap around 4 centimeters. When you have cut your desired length, insert the elastic into the waistband with a safety pin. Feel through the fabric of the waistband to make sure the elastic is smooth all the way around without twisting or folding. With the ends of the elastic outside of the waistband, overlap 4 centimeters on top of each other, then stitch together first a square and then an X inside of the square. It should look something like this. To close the gap in the waistband seam, continue the seam through all layers. Make sure you don't sew through the elastic, only through the fabric. Distribute the fabric evenly around the elastic. To hem the trouser legs, fold twice, 1 centimeter and 1 centimeter again. Press and then top stitch all around the hem. This is what the hem looks like. Now, as a finishing touch, let's secure the elastic in place. So to do that, we need to stitch in the ditch. At center back of the trouser, to keep the elastic from folding and moving around when wearing or washing, use a straight stitch and sew exactly through the center back seam, so the seam will be almost invisible because it's in the ditch. And then you're done. You can give your trousers a final press, make sure they are ready to wear. Well done! If you have any questions at all, let me know in the comments below.